Electrify America indoor charging with a lounge? Yes, please. Are EVs not selling because they're EVs? Would these models sell if they're ICE cars? Used EV values, are they tanking or is it really just natural, normal depreciation? Walmart's making a huge investment in DC fast charging, which I think is a predictor of things to come. Is Tesla preparing layoffs? Might be. And BP's EV charging business boomed in 2023 and they expect it to continue in 2024. So I thought EVs were no good and everybody didn't want them. I don't know. Well, it's Thursday, February 8th, 2024. Let's get to it. Hey there, EV people. It's your buddy Ted here to talk about EV stuff. But before we get to that, I made a mention of it yesterday, but keep your eyes open. More, and there's going to be EV awesome merch coming. I'm not tailgating, I'm charging wirelessly. They're not all dad jokes. Well, most of them are kind of dad jokes, but EV awesome merch on the way, and that's going to be EV awesome, right? I saw a story yesterday that Electrify America is going to be opening an indoor charging station in San Francisco with a lounge for people to go and hang out in while their cars are charging with 20 plugs. And I say, sign me up for that. Of course, it's in San Francisco, so it does me no good on the East Coast, but hopefully that's a sign of where we're heading with EV charging, especially DC fast charging. Indoors, especially at night in a lighted place. That sounds like a good idea. It feels a little safer, giving people a lounge. The only question I have is since it's Electrify America and they're going to have 20 plugs, are 12 of them going to be down all the time? That's the only real concern I would have with it. But I think the idea of covered indoor EV charging is a great idea. I mean, you can't do that with a gas station, right? You can't have an indoor gas station. Everyone would suffocate from the fumes. But EVs are clean. So you can have them inside. You can have 20 EVs inside all charging at the same time. And no one's got to worry about choking to death. So, it's another plus for EVs, right? And there's a lot of news lately about EVs sitting on dealer lots not selling, right? But, I started to think about it like, well, would these cars sell if they were ICE cars? Is it just because they're EVs that they're not selling? I mean, I think about especially a lot of these GM models, like the Blazer EV. It looks cool. I don't see a lot of Blazers on the road as it is now. I mean, maybe they're popular. I don't know. I don't see the gas or electric versions on the road, but the EV version was like riddled with bugs, tech issues. So yeah, why would anybody want to buy that? And look at like a car like the Cadillac Lyric, another GM car. I'm picking on GM here, but it looks nice and everything, but it's underpowered as far as I'm concerned. I don't think it's got enough horsepower. Yeah, it's a luxury car, I guess, but it's not that big. It's not small enough to really be considered a crossover, I don't think, but it's big enough to be an SUV, but not big enough for what a lot of people want. And if you're a premium buyer, I mean, at Cadillac, if you're in that like $70,000-$80,000 range, like why wouldn't you just go for a Mercedes SUV or a BMW, even a Genesis electric SUV would probably be better than the Lyric. And then Chevy is getting rid of CarPlay and Android Auto. They're eliminating it. So for a lot of people, that's a deal breaker. I mean, Tesla gets away with it because Tesla's infotainment system is so good that you can actually live without it. Like when I rent Teslas, I don't really miss CarPlay because the maps are so good. Just the overall system itself, it's just fantastic. Everything is good about it that you can kind of live without Apple CarPlay. I mean, you can still play your music and answer phone calls and stuff when you have your phone plugged in, but getting rid of it for a company like GM, I don't think anybody thinks that their infotainment system is the best. So it just seems to me like, are EVs not selling because they're EVs, or are they just not selling because just the models themselves aren't compelling as a EV or an ICE car? I think it's probably some of both. But to just say, well, people don't want EVs, I don't think that's the real truth. I think it's that they don't want the EVs that some car companies are putting out. I mean, especially GM. I've never been a huge fan of General Motors products to begin with, but I just don't like them for whatever reason. It doesn't boat my float. But even the Mustang Mach-E, it's a good car. But it's not great, and there's a lot of people that just hate the fact that it's called a Mustang and can't accept the fact that the Mach-E is a Mustang. So a lot of people just aren't going to buy it. A lot of truck buyers. I mean, I know a guy who has a F-150 Lightning and loves it. Says it's the best truck he's ever had. He tows with it. He's like a smokehouse kind of guy. He's always smoking meat. He owns a barbecue restaurant, and he loves it. But he's not hauling cinder blocks or wood or bags of cement. So I don't know. Are those guys ready to buy EVs yet? I mean, I think if you're looking for a luxury pickup truck, the higher end F-150 Lightning might be a compelling purchase. But again, the price, it's way up here. I mean, I know Ford's kind of brought it down a little, but I think it's still a little too high. So, it makes me question whether or not it's just the fact that they're EVs or if they're just not compelling models. I mean, we haven't really seen a lot of EV crossovers. And in the U.S., people love their crossovers for whatever reason. I don't get it. I'm not a crossover guy, but a lot of people love them. They love crossovers and SUVs. So, when we get affordable crossovers and affordable electric SUVs, I think the Kia EV9 is going to prove that people are willing to buy an electric SUV when it looks cool. It's got a lot of cool features, and it can do the stuff that a 3-row SUV should be able to do, haul the family around, right? And if you can do it without having to buy gas, even better. So, that's where I come down on that. And then, I've also seen a lot of stories lately about how EV values, used EV values are tanking. Well, used EVs or used cars always are, tank. I mean, I don't know, is this because after the pandemic, used car prices were ridiculously high? And, maybe now they're coming back to sort of historical norms. I think that's probably part of it because people kind of got used to the used car market being insane. And, maybe now it's just falling back, into normalcy. I mean, in 2018, I bought a Nissan Maxima SR Midnight. The sticker price, well, I should say I leased it. Sticker price was $43,500 was the sticker price. And my negotiated buyout when I bought that car in September of 2018, after a 3-year lease with 12,000 miles a year, was $19,000. So they were already predicting that 3 years later, the car would only be worth $19,000. Now, granted, they want to buy it back at what they perceive to be at the time a little bit lower than what market value will be. So let's say they anticipated market value to be $21,000, $22,000 for that car. So that's still basically half the value of when I originally leased it 3 years later. And as it turned out, when I was getting ready to get rid of that car was in the middle of the pandemic. So used car prices were ridiculously high. You couldn't even get new cars at the time. So I actually ended up buying that car out in August of 2021 for the $19,000. And the dealership was not happy about that because at the time they could have gotten way, way more for that car because used car prices were ridiculously high, right? So even by April of 2022, when I got my Polestar 2, rather than trade it, the Polestar guys actually told me, they're like, hey, the best thing you can do is to sell the car. Don't trade in your old car with us because we're going to give you less than you can probably get if you go to Carvana or Car Gurus, one of those guys. Ended up being Car Gurus. Gave me $27,000 for that car when it was basically 4 years old. And it only had 27,000 miles on it. But again, that was during the height of the chip shortage. Nobody could get new cars. Nobody could get used cars. Prices were ridiculous. I think, if none of that had been going on and COVID never happened, I would have been lucky to get $20,000 for that car, $22,000 for that car. And it was in mint condition. But I mean, that's just what happens with used cars. They lose a lot of value. And I looked it up. The average depreciation on any car is like 20% in the first year and 15% per year after that. So if you go 20%, 15%, 15% after 3 years, that's about 50%. So if they're saying, EV value has tanked 49%, like if you bought an EV last year, oh, it's only worth 49% of what it was last year. I don't think that's really true. But, if you buy a car, most people keep their car for 3 or more years, right? So you have to expect that after that amount of time, it's not going to be worth anywhere near what you paid for it. It's just not. I mean, that's not reality, right? So, I just wonder again if this is just like the anti EV hype where they just call out EVs. Oh, their value's tanked. Well, has it? Or is it just coming back to historical norms for all cars? I think that's, again, maybe it's a mix of both, but I think it's mostly the fact that we're getting back to normal used car values, historically norms, and not just we're coming off this pandemic high, and it's just like with inflation. People think this year, like, oh, inflation's down. It's not down. It's just not going up as fast as it was because it got so out of control for a couple of years that it was just ridiculous. And so to see, now if maybe inflation's at like 4%, where it was at like 9% in, middle of 2022 or 2023 when it was really high. Yeah, it didn't come down. It's just growing less. So, but you get this perception if you see like something that maybe a year ago cost $100 and today it costs 95. It's like, oh wow, prices are really coming down. Well, 5 years ago maybe it was only $70. You know what I mean? So I think the whole pandemic and everything that followed has just so skewed our perceptions of, value and where we stand financially. I mean, people, if you look at right now, the stock market is roaring, the economy's on fire. It's just like like a rocket ship right now. But if you poll most people, and if you look at polls, people are like, oh, they think the economy sucks. But unemployment's at historical lows. Like I said, the stock market's cranking. Wages are up. So by most accounts, the economy is actually doing pretty well, despite the fact that the politicians we have in office are mostly idiots. Things take care of themselves, but perception, I guess, maybe is reality. I don't know. I also saw that this isn't really a news story, but I was just watching a video by the EV or the network architect. I'll link to his channel below, but he's really great because he provides like tons of data. He's a very data guy, and he's awesome. I love his stuff. But he was talking about this and made me think of it that Walmart is making a huge investment in DC fast charging at something like 800 of their locations across the U.S., where they're going to be installing Walmart branded DC fast chargers, and I believe most of them are charge points. But I mean, obviously, if they're making that kind of investment to install charging at their locations, I mean, they're doing it for their shoppers, right? For their consumers. They're not just putting them in so that people driving by on the highway are gonna be like, oh, I can stop there and charge. I mean, yes, there is that, but I think they realize that in the relatively near future, a lot of their customers are going to be driving EVs. Now, if you listen to the media and anti-EV crowd, they'll tell you that, only rich people drive EVs. And, it's all, so you would think that only Trader Joe's would be putting in DC fast chargers. Walmart, is not known for being a high ticket, premium place to shop. It's value, right? You go to Walmart because you get good prices. And so, that's where the average person goes to shop. And so if they're putting these chargers in, I think they realize that, EVs are on the march. 2024 might see a little bit of a slowdown, but it's going to accelerate again. And I think they see that coming. Walmart's not usually wrong. They're historically have usually made the right decision with their business and the changes that they made when, no matter what it is, when you grocery pickup, all that kind of stuff. Like they've always been, I don't know, ahead of the game, but they've always been maybe ahead of the curve anyway. They can usually see the trends and see what's coming. So I would trust them, and to basically be a predictor that it's not just the Trader Joe crowd that's going to be driving EVs 5, 10 years from now. That it's going to be much more commonplace than it is today, and it's becoming more and more common as we go. Just my lunchtime walk today, my 25-minute walk, I saw an EV6. I saw a Ioniq 5 drive by. There was a Ioniq 6 that turned off one of the side streets as I was walking by. Of course, I saw probably 3 Model Ys, 2 Model 3s, a Model S. EVs are everywhere, man, and they're just going to keep being everywhere. So to all the people that don't like EVs, get used to us because we're not going anywhere. Also saw some reports that it's possible Tesla might be prepping for layoffs because I guess they've gone to the managers and started asking people, hey, of all your employees, who's critical, right? That's usually the first sign that layoffs are coming. When they start, who can you not live without? Because the ones you can live without might be out. And that's not good for obviously anybody that might get laid off, because I'm sure most people that went to work for Tesla thought, I'm working for Tesla and this is the coolest job ever, right? But I think what it's a sign of is Tesla is a tech company, really. I mean, they make cars, but I think most people would kind of consider them to be a tech company. And, this is kind of what happens when tech startups become mature. Google went through it. Facebook went through it. Microsoft back in the day, Apple back in the day. I mean, tech startups that do really, really well and take off like a rocket ship, eventually they get to a point where they go, okay, we got to look at our business now. And I think Tesla's expecting that this year is going to be a little slower growth than what they've seen in the last few years. This is going to be that sort of lull year, and they're evaluating the business. And, it is a business that needs to make money. So they're going to make sure that they do what needs to be done to make money, right? So I don't think it's a sign that like EVs are going away, which is what you're going to hear in the media. I just think it's a sign of a tech company reaching that maturity level that they're realizing, okay, we're not just this rocket ship. We're a business, and to keep it growing and to keep it going, we've got to make some tough decisions. And, a lot of businesses have to face that. So I think that's where they are. And the last thing is another sign that EVs are not going anywhere is BP. Their EV charging business has been blowing up, and in 2023, they said the charge points their installed charge points increased by 35% year over year, and their energy sold through those charge points jumped 150%. And they now have about 29,000 charge points installed globally, and they expect to go to 40,000 by 2025. And a lot of that is in the U.S. So, they bought travel centers last year, and, they're beginning to start rolling out EV chargers to a lot of their travel centers, which are just big, gas station, truck stop type places. That's where that $100 million they spent on Tesla charging is going to come in. They're going to start, you're going to start seeing BP branded Tesla V4 chargers going in all over the U.S. So just another sign that EVs are not going anywhere, that they're here to stay, and the companies that will be supporting a lot of that, they're still investing in EVs, EV charging infrastructure, because they know what's coming, that the future is electric, and it's going to be bright. I hope, I think, I'm pretty sure. We'll see. But in the meantime, as you guys all know, EVs are awesome, and it's okay to be awesome. Catch you next time.